Hello, everyone. Welcome to our group meeting, our free webinar. I see we've got 34 people live right now, and hopefully people will watch our recording as well. Please let me know, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Do I need to talk louder? Everything's good? Alrighty. So we announced that our primary topic would be Sergei's recent live presentation that he did from Russia on manifestation and self. What did you call it?
Self-sovereignty, Jill. So
Yeah, that.
sometimes I help her in English with English.
And
Yeah.
so watching the program, I had a few questions, so I thought I would start with my own questions, and maybe that will clear some things up for other people, and then we can move on to other people's questions about that or about anything else you want. I see, Safira, do you have your hand raised? Are you waving high?
No, I wanted to ask if you can unmute everyone because there are background noises because
Yes,
not everyone
if
is
we
unmute. Or tell people to unmute themselves, then you don't have that on the recording as well. And it don't create this interference when you speak.
Thank you so much for letting us know. А
But
ты можешь,
somewhere that
ты
I
можешь
can.
у всех микрофоны выключить, Jill?
I don't remember how to do that.
You should have a voice when you go in.
Ты обычно это делала.
Go to participants.
Just,
Yes, go to participants. Yes.
Oh, with that.
yes.
How do I mute?
Well, it's 5 o'clock, you see.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for your help.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody will be muted for now, and then when we go to questions, the easiest is if you will type your questions into the chat box, and then we don't have to worry about people talking at the same time. And
so if anyone for some reason don't access the chat room, they can also type their questions to phone numbers, to WhatsApp. So you can give us our phone numbers.
Is this your Russian one or your American one?
This is I will bring American one. So
yeah, get me from
I have
downstairs
both.
too, because
Yes,
I forgot it downstairs. So these, oops, so that's supposed to be 720 378 0302. So we're getting our phones, we will have them at hand. So both of those. I'm Jill. I'm Sergei's wife, for any of you who don't know me yet. All right, so Sergei is coming, and okay, so we have our phones. You can write us.
So now we are fully equipped.
Okay, now we're really starting. And I wrote up a PowerPoint with my questions on it. So we will go through that quickly, and we will ask, share screen. So, life according to your own design. So a lot of us follow some sort of teaching, and we try and live according to somebody else's design. That is a choice that we make, but in the end, it's always us that determines what we want. And we're choosing to follow somebody else's design or our own design. But anytime we follow somebody else and we don't ask ourselves what we want, we just sort of, oh, so and so said we have to do this, we end up giving away our power. And that is also true with Almin's teachings. If we worship her and just do things because she said so, and we don't ask ourselves if that resonates with us and if that is one of her teachings that we need to apply, then we end up losing power. And one of the things in Sergei's presentation, he stressed that we do not give people rules. If you're going to be an Almin student, you have to live like this, and you have to live like that, and you have to do this. So leaders, wise leaders that want their people to really live good lives, will give general principles and say, well, in general, in your life, this is a good idea to do. And then they give you the freedom to figure out how to apply it in your life. And those who give you strict rules and say, if you're going to be in our group, you have to do this, and we will watch your life and control you and make sure that you do exactly what we think you should be doing. Those people generally are interested in taking your energy and suppressing you and making themselves look the strongest of anybody in their group. Okay, so we will. Yes, so if you have questions, feel free to write them in chat, and we will address them at the end, unless they fit into the topic that we're going on.
Actually, may I add something? Almin asked us very much if something, it's her words, if something from her teaching doesn't resonate with anyone, she said, just forget about it. But if something resonates, just allow it to be inspired by it. Allow yourself to be inspired by it. So this is her words. And actually, some people asked us just recently, it seems like Almin, some ugly comment. It seems like Almin takes away our energy. Actually, Almin, during one of the retreats, she told us that you could never do that because your energy could be toxic for me. So it is not Almin's purpose for us to be her followers or worshippers. Her purpose, her initial purpose, she shared this purpose with me when we just started to work together in 2010. She said, I don't upbring followers. I raise masters and leaders. So Almin's main objective is to teach us to be self-sufficient and self-sovereign. Actually, her very first online course was dedicated to this matter. It was Science of Immortality and Incorruptibility. So one of the main objectives of this course is to help us to rise up in our divine self, in our divine self-sovereignty and self-sufficiency. And this is what we are going to talk about today, mostly.
And I will go ahead and start with one of the questions that we got over email was about humans versus original ones. Are humans also eternal beings? Do they reincarnate? Are they the same as us? Or are they sort of static things that just, die once? How are we, in essence, different? So pretty much every religious group that exists has some sort of definition of us versus them. So if you're part of our group, you do this, you do that, you believe this, and it makes sense to have some sort of differentiation, because if you're in a particular group and you're living a certain way and striving towards certain things, you're going to interact differently with people in your group than people who are not in your group, people who don't understand what you're doing. But that sort of leads to an elitism of like, only our group is going to be saved, and everybody else are these like, let's have a holy war on them. We can kill them because they're nobodies or whatever. So every religion has a different, explanation of that. And the same thing happens in our group. Almin tries to tell us that not everybody who is in humanity has the same consciousness as we do. And so we can't expect out of, the people we label as humanity that they're going to be as high spiritual beings, or we just need to know that they have a different mentality and to relate to them differently than we would somebody who is in our movement. But we're going to talk a lot about what mind does, and mind likes to categorize. Okay, they're not us, so they're bad. Mind does the whole good bad thing. So our mind can't see somebody else and, oh, that person's humanity, that person's original one. The reason that we need to differentiate between people is to know how we should interact with them. We need to know that we can't expect too much of them. We don't want to expect them to be super spiritual when they're not. But we don't know, anybody can become. So basically what the difference is people who are working on their, the spiritual side of their life, seeing an eternal perspective, and anybody can be just sort of normal humanity and living a very materialistic life, and then suddenly have a wake-up experience and start walking their spiritual path. And that can happen at any point in time. And so someone can convert, let's say, from a humanity to an original one, and we don't see that happen. That's something that is an internal thing for them.
And actually, Almin, during one of her retreats in Newport, there was a question to Almin. How should we relate to humanity versus the original ones? And her answer was, you never will know. And it's not the matter of your concern to try to figure out who is the original one and who is a human. And she shared her own experience. She told us that she relates to every being as to a potential original one, to God or goddess. So this is the rule of her life. This is her principle, and she wanted to share with us her principle. Maybe we will be happy to adopt it and to be the same. So this is Almin's personal attitude and principle in relating to world around us.
And this is true. So basically, if you interact with a person, allowing them to relate to life or respond at a higher level, you sort of open that door to them. You show them respect and you allow them to act worthy of that respect. And sometimes people disappoint you, but in working with psych patients, I used to work on an ambulance, and we had psych patients that we had to transfer every now and then. And if you interact with a normal person and you treat them like a psych patient, very demeaning and like, oh, your view of the world is totally wrong, they will, interestingly enough, be very belligerent and act like a psych patient. And if you take a psych patient and you give them the benefit of the doubt and whatever their hallucinations or, ideas of the world, maybe that's actually right. Maybe they are more correct than you, and you just don't see what they see. And so you interact with them with respect instead of like, well, you're crazy and I'm right. They can act amazingly normal, and you can have a surprisingly normal conversation with them. So our ability to see somebody, like when we both are from a Christian tradition, and so I quote the Bible a lot, but like Christ saw his disciples not as the sorry idiots they were when he first met them, but he saw them as the wise apostles that they were going to be at the end of their lives. So if we are able to do that to other people and give them potential with our vision of, we see them as something they're going to become rather than what they are right now, we open the door for them to actually walk into that, so we can help them with that. So, and my next point is we have different forms of communication. There's different cultures, and it's difficult to know how to interact with others. There are some people who want to be part of a group that is very strict and controlling, and they want to present themselves as victims in their lives and be like, oh, poor me. Oh, I have all these problems and nobody can help me with them. Oh, can you help me? And there's lots of reasons that it's, beneficial in a way for them to be victims. And sometimes we find ourselves in our lives also trying to present ourselves as victims. And, it's okay to be what you are and what level you're at. It just is much better if you are conscious about it and you realize, yeah, I feel like being a victim. And if you make a conscious decision, to be at the level that you're at, then you lose less energy than if you're pretending to be something you're not. So becoming conscious of our decisions. There's a difference between the way we use the word intention, a lot of times end up being sort of an assumption, sort of like, well, this is probably going to happen. Or like, hey, it'd be nice if this happens, but it's not the same as an actual decision of like, this needs to happen. And if we make a decision from our subconscious and we realize with our whole being that this needs to happen, it will. And a lot of times, like, we'll set an intention and it won't happen. And we're like, well, what's wrong with my intentions? And it's, maybe we should not use the word intention as much as a decision, because intentions can be really sort of wishy-washy. And sometimes, we have intentions that come from our brain and we're like, oh, well, this would be a good intention to have, but it's not something we actually want. It's not supported on a feeling level on our subconscious. The first thing we have to do is accept ourselves the way we are instead of pretending to be something we're not. Like if we're part of a group of people and the group of people is like, oh, we need to, I'm using the example of being a victim. If we are getting away from being a victim and taking responsibility for our lives, if there's something that you're enjoying being a victim about, or you're not quite ready to give that up, you don't want to admit that in front of the group. And so you're like, oh, no, I'm trying to take control of my life, but it's not working and something else is the problem, not me. The first thing that you have to do with any bad habits that you have is to accept yourself just the way you are. All of our bad habits, including, wanting to feel like a victim or any of our false perceptions of the world, these are survival mechanisms. And so if we just try and get rid of them without understanding where they came from, we're going to cause more problems for ourselves rather than growing spiritually and getting to a new level. Survival mechanisms protect us from trauma and insanity, or things that we can't deal with. So our mind has, we've created, time, space, all these, levels of separation and linearity for our mind to be able to function in the world. And, time doesn't really exist. Space doesn't really exist, but we have created these things as a physical space to interact with so that our mind can function. And if our mind is forced to go into our vastness, where everything is just a chaotic jumble of happening at the same time and everything all together, your brain can't sort it out and it goes insane. And you really can sort of like lose yourself and not be able to function from that. We also have issues with trauma where we have an experience in life that we are not ready to deal with yet. And so until we're able to heal that, then we have splits in our personality where we sort of isolate the trauma off in this area, or we have certain things that we do to help us not have to deal with that because we're not ready to yet. And if we're actually not ready to deal with it yet, then, if we force ourselves to, or if we're forced by somebody else to deal with it ahead of time, then we won't be able to heal it. It will cause more problems rather than less. So people keep their, lower consciousness, bad habits, being a victim, because it's familiar and comfortable. If you're a victim, then you don't have any responsibility. You don't feel guilty about being the way you are. You get sympathy from other people, and that means that they're less likely to attack and judge you. So you're feeling judged. And judging, a lot of us are really afraid of being judged by others, but judging is a function of mind. And first and foremost, it's a function of our own mind. So if we want to live in freedom and not have people judge us, and, going back to our first slide of, groups of people that have really strict rules and you have to be just like this to be part of our group. If we want to get away from that feeling of people judging us for whatever we're doing and then actually learn to live in freedom, the first thing we have to do is accept ourselves and stop judging ourselves. If we feel any sort of judgment from anybody else, that means it resonates with what we have within us. It is coming from within. So we have to learn how to turn off judging within, and then it won't resonate anymore. There are some people who seem to have no conscience. They just do whatever they want, and they don't worry about upsetting anybody. They don't worry about anybody judging them. And, if you're one of those people who was raised really strictly, you're like, oh, they can't do that. They're going to have trouble if they do that because I always got yelled at that. So you sort of like watch them and you wait for something bad to happen, and it never does. And part of that is because we're hoping something bad will happen to them because we feel judged, and therefore, they should be judged just as we are, but they don't judge themselves. And so they just do what they want and they have a wonderful life and they just don't resonate with judging. And so they can do these things. And our question is not how can we impose our beliefs on other people, but how can we free ourselves and do all of our judgments and prejudices, are they true? Is this something we need to continue in our life? Or should we maybe get rid of them and say to our internal mom who yells at us for doing this, that, and the other thing, Mom, I'm a grown woman now and I want to live differently than you do. It is the mind that judges and limits freedom. A lot of times people are like, oh, but your conscience, that's like a spiritual thing. But it's a very common problem to confuse your mind and your conscience. They are different things. Your mind is supposed to be like your calculator. So you come up with something that you want to do and your mind calculates, okay, in order to get to such and such city, I need to either drive there. And so I need to look at a map and figure out how to get there, or I need to look at the bus schedule and figure out how the buses go and make sure I have enough money to go on the bus and, or gas in my car. Your mind is a calculator that helps you fulfill the tasks that you have decided to do. Your mind is not your moral judge. It's not the role of savior. It is not the director of your life. Your mind is just supposed to be a fulfiller of commands. So you decide we're going to do this, and your mind is like, okay, I'll figure out how to help you do that. If your mind is in a position where it's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, then we have things a little bit backwards. So we're going to talk about feelings. And Sergey talked a lot about feelings and how feelings are, feelings are always right, but feelings, we can get confused a little bit on feelings. So feelings and intuition are guidance more than the mind. Mind is, trying to be in control. And so mind tries to convince us that feelings provide unreliable guidance. And there are times that what we perceive as feelings are unreliable. So like if we're just impulsive and we're like, oh, hey, we should do this. Every now and then we realize, oh, we should go to the store and buy such and such. Oh, wait, it's 3 a.m. and the store is closed. Okay, so that was wrong. Sometimes we're in a mood, like the world just seems dark and everything's terrible, but it's just the mood we're in. And a few minutes will go by and we'll feel better. And that will change. And so it's not guidance, it's just the mood we're in. And even prejudices, things that we think like the world is a bad place. It may not be true, but that colors our perception of things. And we can feel that as a feeling of, ooh, I have a bad feeling about this, when really it's just, we had a past experience that was bad, and that's coloring our perception of the present experience, but the present experience is different from the past experience. So we do have all those things that can confuse us, and that we think are feelings, but they do actually feel a little bit different when we start getting into them. A lot of these false feelings that are unreliable actually arise from thoughts. It's the kind of thing where you're like, oh, what is so and so going to think about me? Is this top, like, is this okay? Are they going to start going, oh, but you have too much neck showing there? Oh, that's the wrong color. And then we start going off on something about, like, oh yeah, we remember last time I went to church, and somebody started going off on this and that and the other thing, and so then we start reacting to that emotionally. So our emotional reactions to our own thoughts are mind based. And so wind symbolizes thoughts, and water symbolizes emotions. And so how you get waves is the wind starts blowing and it creates waves. So when the wind dies down, then you have peace and calm, and the water can settle. You also have tsunamis, which are created by earthquakes. So like when you stub your toe, you get really angry, or you have an anger response to pain, which is physical. And that's also something that will pass. So in order to get your true feelings that are your intuition and that provide guidance, the best way to find them is to have times of silence and solitude, where you can feel what is really in your soul, what's not being caused by physical pain and what's not being caused by your annoying thoughts. You can get to know your real self. And I like to give the analogy of, like, you have a pond, and if there's a lot of waves, you can't see the bottom. If there's a lot of dirt in the water, you can't see the bottom. And the surface of the pond is, our surface mind. And then, the water in the pond is, our soul or our subconscious. And then the bottom of the pond is our, our spiritual, our deepest self, our real self. And once you get in a still enough space where there's no dirt dissolved in the water, it's all settled out, and there's no wind on the surface, then you can see all the way to the bottom of the pond. And that's where you get your direction from. But it does require a place of inner stillness. And a lot of times when we're meditating, we try and still our mind. And Sergey has this joke about, the land of the enlightened people, where everyone goes around because they have nothing going on in their mind, and so they must be enlightened. But a state of meditation where we're getting inspiration isn't stagnant. It's not the absence of brain function. It is, you have a movement and inspiration, but it's not verbal and linear like actual mind thoughts. And in this state, you can look at your life and, oh, I have to do this task. And you have a sort of heaviness with it of I don't like that. And something else you think about gives you sort of a light feeling, a sense of inspiration. Those kinds of things are your guidance of what you want to be doing and what maybe you should try and figure out how to stop doing. If there's something that you do that just brings you a sense of heaviness, how can you change that to make it not heavy and oppressive? And then after you've had time in silence and solitude, at the very end of that is when your mind turns on. When you have figured out what you wanted, you feel the sense of heaviness with, something that you have to do. And your question is, how do I change that? And you sort of feel a few different things. And then you turn your mind on to try and figure out how to plan and create that strategy to actually change things and to reach the goals that you felt you need to in that time of silence. Mind should not be in a position where it's trying to decide whether we're right or wrong. So in the Bible, the whole fall into sin was created by Adam and Eve going to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is when our mind decides to categorize, this is good, this is bad. So like we have square nails and we have round nails, and we have square holes and we have round holes. And if you have a square nail and a round hole, one of them's bad, right? Because they don't go together. So either the round hole is bad or the square nail is bad. But if you have a square nail and a square hole, all of a sudden the square nail is good. So everything is subject to circumstance. There's nothing that is categorically right all the time or wrong all the time. There's always some circumstance where that wrong thing is actually going to be right, or that right thing is actually going to be wrong. And so instead of our mind trying to just black and white categorize things, we need to have a more intuitive approach of what do I need to be doing now in this particular situation, and an individual approach to be able to see all the intricate nuances of guidance that we need. So we make good decisions when we have feelings and mind united. There's been a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, which is mind detached from feeling or soul or any sort of depth. When mind decides to try and be spirit, and it tries to act on its own without any sort of intuition, well, I should want this because this is considered good. I should be this or that. And so when we try and make decisions about our life, okay, so we need to manifest something. Well, hey, I should manifest this because everybody else thinks this is a good thing. And we don't ask whether that's something that I actually want or need. And as soon as mind is functioning apart from source, then that is artificial intelligence. So if you're concerned about artificial intelligence taking over your life, act from a deep place. Make sure that you always use intuition instead of letting your mind control you. And then artificial intelligence will stop being such a scary topic. Because artificial intelligence really is, mirrored in the world around us of our own mind functioning without intuition. So on the one hand, we always manifest what we want. On the other hand, there's so many things that don't manifest that we think that we want. So if it's an intention that our mind has created, that our mind thinks is a good idea, but we don't have it supported on the feeling level, it will not happen. And so if we're in a situation where like, oh, well, hey, we should manifest this. I want, I don't know, let's say a Rolls Royce. I want a Rolls Royce. So, and Almin says, our technique of manifesting is, we come up with what we want, and then we start feeling that we have it, and we, create this with the feelings. So I try and imagine, what is it going to feel like to have a Rolls Royce? And I like try and force myself to feel this, and then it still doesn't happen. If we come up with the intention and then we try and force ourselves to feel it, it's obviously not something that we want from deep down. If it's something that our spirit, our soul wants, like on a deep level, we'll have that feeling. And then we just verbalize the feeling that we already have. And so the feeling actually comes first. If you don't have that feeling there, it's not something that you're going to be able to manifest. And like Jesus Christ, when he was doing miracles, he was a very powerful person, and he was able to do a lot of miracles that other people didn't see. But one of the most important skills that he had was the ability to discern which miracles were possible and which weren't. And so you don't see any stories of Christ in the Bible trying to do some miracle and then being like, well, shoot, that's not going to work. Because he could feel whether it was going to work or not. And he'd be like, okay, so this is a miracle that's going to happen. And he would exert his energy there, and it would. And if there was a miracle that was not going to happen, he didn't exert his energy there. They say that there were lots of people who were sick in Israel at the time, and he didn't heal any of them. And he has the famous quote of a prophet in his own hometown is not recognized, and he was not able to do any miracles in his hometown because everybody was like, oh, well, that's Jesus, we saw him grew up. He was like, what's special about him? but there's no specific stories of like, oh, he saw the sick person, he tried and tried, and like, you know, they didn't get healed anyway. He didn't even try, but he knew that it wasn't going to happen because he could feel that the person didn't have faith. He could feel that there's no feeling behind it. So with Olive Means tools that she gives us and ways that she explains of how to manifest things, there's no magic wand of like, oh, I want this magic thing to just materialize and poof, and all of a sudden it'll just manifest. What she does is she gives us tips and tricks to help us, you know, mind and intuition are the two hemispheres of our brain, right and left hemispheres of our brain. And she gives us things to help us, you know, create a language where our two halves, our separate parts, can communicate with each other. So we can tune into our intuition, and the intuition can then become verbalized, and we can become conscious of it and manifest it in that way. So going back to what I said, we manifest what we want all the time. So if it doesn't manifest, that either means we don't actually want it, or it is just not the right timing. A lot of times the things that we try and manifest that don't work out are things that we're not doing for ourselves. It's not something that we want deep down. It's like our parents want them. And so in order to make mom feel better, I want to manifest this, that, or the other thing. I want to become something that I'm not because she wants me to be something that I'm not, and she'll be happy and stop nagging me. But unfortunately, that's not enough motivation to actually manifest something. If we're trying to manifest the desires of other people, we in effect are pretending to be something we're not. We're lying. And it won't work out well because, you know, we are living a lie and we're not living authentically. Life will smell us out and be like, no, sorry, you're not authentic, and we will have more problems. And I've had lots of experience with that in various churches where they're very strict and you have to do this and you have to do that. And so I try and pretend like I'm like that at church so people won't yell at me, but they always manage to figure out that I'm sort of, there's something wrong with me, and it always ends up bad. So the reason that we're doing webinars on Sunday mornings now is because I got fired from my last church position and it ended badly. All right, so if people have to leave, feel free to ask questions over email and we can continue our dialogue.
And we will send the recording, of course.
Yes, and everybody will have the recording.
Mm-hmm.
So especially if we're in any sort of moral group. So it may not be, you know, a really strict church, but I think most of us have some sort of idea of what masters, spiritual masters, are supposed to look like, act like, and we're trying to fulfill our own image of a holy person. And sometimes that image of a holy person came from, you know, somebody else's ideas, or, you know, we looked at somebody else's life and we're like, oh, hey, that would be great. We try and imitate them. But imitating anybody else is not being ourselves. And so what we need to manifest in our own lives, what we need to express and portray, is what we are, what we were created to be, what our actual essence is. And a lot of times we compare ourselves to other people. Well, so-and-so doesn't want this, and this seems like a sort of crazy whim. Why am I doing this? This isn't, you know, something that other people would see as necessary. We can only manifest what are, in essence, existential needs, something that we need to survive, but what we need to express to be ourselves. And since we're all different, we all have different, we'll call them existential needs. One person may manifest themselves Rolls Royce and have all these, like, you know, expensive things and whatever. And we're like, oh, I should be like that. You know, I need to make an impression on these, you know, people. And, you know, how am I worse than them that I can't manifest for myself a Rolls Royce? But for them, it's part of their identity and they need it. And since it's part of their identity, they don't have trouble manifesting it. Whereas for you, maybe it is just an extraneous thing that you want to have to show off to other people. Or if it's, you look at somebody else and they don't have all these things, they're living a very simple life, and like, well, I should be living a really simple life, but I need this and I need that, and I don't feel comfortable living without this. And so you may be worried about them looking at you and going, oh, they have such a complicated life and you need a simplified life. But you actually need these things in order to feel like yourself and be able to express fully. And then there are a lot of things that like I have in my life that seem like existential needs, but they do not happen. And so, a couple examples, just the past couple days yesterday. I went, so in the summer I grow cucumbers and we pickle them. And so I have all kinds of pickles. And every year, the stores run out of dill seed because it's pickling season. And every year I go, oh, next spring or winter, I need to stock up on dill seed. But you never know how much you're going to get. You never know how much you're going to need. And then if you keep it for too many years, then, it's not fresh anymore. So every year I end up in the situation where it's the middle of pickling season and I have run out of dill and I need to find some now, and the stores don't have it. So I have a few more days to manifest myself dill seed before I have to make another batch of pickles. But I went to the store again yesterday and I was in a sort of bad mood and depressed about everything. And I was like, they're not going to have dill seed, because sometimes you can just feel that I'm not in a state where I'm able to manifest things, but I'm going to go check the store anyway, just in case. So of course they didn't have it. So if there's any sort of like emotional attachment to outcome, if we're going to feel like a victim because we didn't get our thing, also, I was hoping to find we have a hard drive that we have all of our files. It's like our whole life is on there. And I've never had trouble keeping track of it until about, I think it's been a week that I haven't seen it and I don't know where it is. But I don't have enough room on my computer. And so in order to record today's file, I needed to move it somewhere. And so I was like, I need to find the hard drives that I can move the files to there. So last night I was looking for it everywhere and I couldn't find it. And it seemed like an existential need because we're doing this important webinar and I need to be able to record it. But I found a flash drive that had room on it. And so we moved it to the flash drive. So we still need to find this hard drive, but the timing wasn't as urgent last night because we had other options. And back to my dill seed, if I don't find dill seed, there's always the option of giving the cucumbers away, going to the food bank and, giving them fresh cucumbers or something like that. So if we have options, well, I could pickle my cucumbers. I could give them away. I could do this with them. I could do that with them. If we have different options and we stop having this emotional sense of panic, if this doesn't happen, I'm toast. Ironically, if we're emotionally attached to the outcome, it's a block. We cannot manifest what we are emotionally attached to. So we have to find ways to release that emotional attachment. So find a way to calm down, activate a sense of playfulness, effortlessness, coming up with different options. Okay, so I could do this, I could do that. Danny says, you don't need the stuff from what you have been living previously. Perhaps you're making space for a brand new life. So yes, sometimes, especially if you live in a house and you have a fire and everything you have burns down, maybe that is a sign that you need to let go. So on the one hand, we have our existential needs, but sometimes life tries to tell us something. Another example on that is, so in Russian, we've been doing a series of webinars on bird clocks, and I needed to print off a blank template so that I could make a power sigil for the webinar. And our printer had been broken. It just suddenly, it was printing along, and all of a sudden I can't find my print head. And you're like, your print head is right there. No, I can't find my head. And you're like, your head, there may be something very deeply symbolic with this printer not being able to find its head. But anyway, So we sort of turned it off for like a week or something like that. And then, I was like, oh, but I didn't print any extra templates and I need a template for the webinar. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I could use an old template and just white it out and draw over it, but that's not alchemically real good. So I went down to the printer and I'm like, printer, I can use an old template. I can white it out. I can, but it would be really nice if you could cooperate and print me a new template for my webinar tomorrow. This is something where, sometimes you feel that there's like spiritual importance to something. And like, so I'm like, printer, please work with me. And it printed. It was so wonderful. And it's been working for like a week or so. And then with another Bird Clock webinar that we were trying to prepare, and I just could not process the information at all. And I was like, well, we have this document, and if I print it, it will probably be much easier to process than trying to read it on the computer, because sometimes just reading something on the computer screen just, no. So I was like, I'm going to try printing this. And Sergey was like, well, maybe we should just put this off for another week. Maybe we've got too much going on, and we should take a week off and just have some more time to prepare. And I'm like, no, we won't reach budget if we keep putting things off. We need to get this done, and if we start putting things off, it'll just be forever. So we need to do this. And so I hit print, and 3 of 8 pages printed, and then the printer lost its head. I just stopped printing. It's like, I can't find my print head. And you're like, ugh. So it was like, and I couldn't fix it. It wouldn't work. And so I was like, well, maybe, Sergey, you're right. Maybe we need to take this week off and sort of calm down and figure out what topic we're doing. And, so yes, sometimes it's hard to tell which situation you have, whether you're going to be able to fix it because this is an existential need, or whether life is telling you that, no, you don't actually need this. You need to look in a different direction. So, that's where we need to be open to receiving information from outside. And someone in our chat room asked the question, what is the difference between surrender versus losing ourselves or giving ourselves away? And, these questions of, is this existential need for me? Is this something that I need to be like, no, this is spiritually important. This is something I need to do, versus, well, maybe life is trying to tell me that I need to look in a different direction. Maybe I need to reevaluate. Is this a surrender thing where I'm like, okay, life, tell me what I need to know? Or is this where I'm becoming weak and losing what it is that I need to express in life? And it's a really thin line. And that is where our intuition comes in, that for situations like that where you're unsure, it's really good to take some time out and just be in silence and just feel the deepest part of yourself. What is life trying to tell me? What is my deepest self trying to tell me? And yes, Michelle, we've made a note of your question. We will get to that in a bit. In silence.
Heart.
Oh, does the heart and the world speak?
Yeah.
I
understand.
Yes. So it's what you hear in the silence,
yeah,
that is real.
Exactly.
And yes, if you're upset about something, it can be really hard to get to that place of silence. A lot of times it can be helpful to, go to the quietest room of your house where you can have as little as possible background noise. Sometimes music helps to get to that calm place. I do a lot of journaling because the act of writing is very slow, and it slows your thought processes down so that you have less of this like crazy mind activity going on. So you kind of slow down, and it's still verbal, but you process things very slowly. And you can also ask a question. You write a question, how should I feel about this? And then like, I like to take a different color pen so I can tell them apart, like a red pen, and like feel an answer to your question and try writing it. And since it's your own journal and you're the only one who's going to be reading it, there's no pressure of like, oh, what if I write something that's not true? You just write it, whatever it is that comes. And then you read it afterwards and you feel, is this something helpful? Is this something wise? And a lot of times it is. You're like, wow, that's really deep. But if you're like, oh, how do I know that's real? Just write it. Whatever answer you feel in, to your question, just write it, and just write as long as you keep getting something. And then you read it afterwards and, oh, yeah, that's true. And a lot of times, some of our problems in life are like, we're like, God, should I get chocolate ice cream or pistachio ice cream? Is it chocolate ice cream or pistachio ice cream? Which is the right answer? And he's like, a pizza. Like, we're totally in the wrong, like, we just totally need to like reorient and look at things in a completely different way. So, and there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. It's not like, oh, well, you did the wrong thing. Life is a process of trial and error and us learning about ourselves. So it's like when you're learning a new skill, when you're learning to drive, we all do stupid things like stall in the middle of an intersection when you're trying to turn left. So not everybody probably learned on a stick shift, but I remember times when you're turning left and you're waiting for the oncoming traffic to stop, and the light turns yellow and it's going to be red, and you have to get out of the intersection really quick. And so, you try and start fast, but in doing that, you stall, and there you are on a red light, stuck in the middle of the intersection. You have to restart your car. We all had situations like that. And there are situations like that in life where we're like, oh, you feel so stupid, but that's how you learn. And those situations make you wiser and stronger. And the idea is to be wiser and stronger, not to be right the first time. And so the more we're able to accept ourselves the way we are on the level we're at, and accept the life experiences that we are given, and learn to treasure them and what we learned from them and how they made us stronger, the more mature we are, and the more that helps us later in life, and the more we actually are stronger. So talking about attachment to outcome, faith and love are creative and dynamic feelings, and they radiate outward. So they create, they manifest. If you're in fear, so attachment to outcome a lot of times is based on fear of, what if this doesn't happen? I need this, but it's not going to happen. And so we're afraid of that. Fear is static and weak. And like Almin has said that, when we're in love or when we're healthy, our energy lines around our body create an egg shape that is the strongest physical shape. And so nothing can harm us. And when we start fearing, then instead of being the strong egg shape, the lines start bending inward like an hourglass. And that is very weak and easy to crush. And we're pulling in towards ourselves, attracting not what we want and need, but attracting that which we fear, because that's the energy we've got going on. If we only see one acceptable outcome, like I have to find my hard drive, or I have to find dill, then we're limited in our vision, and that blocks our creation process. Like Einstein said, a problem cannot be solved at the level it was created. So we have to learn to change our vision. We have to be open to the fact that maybe we should be ordering a pizza instead of ice cream. And a lot of times in our limited vision, we don't realize that what we want is actually harmful for us. So like, I want this thing to print off because I need to learn this thing for the webinar. And what we really need to do is put the webinar off, reorient, figure out what we actually need to be presenting, give people a week off. Maybe they're all busy. And if we're really forceful of like, no, I have to have this, then we don't see what we actually need. And so it's not the manifestation of this that we need, but we need to reorient and have our perspective opened. And timing is a big thing in manifestation. So we're creators of measure and movement. We determine the speed of manifestation, which is, speed is movement through space. So more movement through more space is faster than, less movement through less space. If we're concentrated on our goal it manifests faster. This is true of any tasks that we're going to be doing. Like if I'm trying to put together a PowerPoint and I'm concentrating on it and nobody's bothering me, it's going to go a lot faster than if like I write a couple points and then my mom's like, oh, Jill, can you help me with this? And I'm like, okay, so I go do that. And I come back and I try and remember where I was and get back into my train of thought. And before I do that, the phone rings and it's somebody I have to talk to. And, you know, that makes things go a lot slower. If we're concentrated, it goes faster. And if we're in a dire need, like, oh my gosh, I'm about to die, and you know, we're really, really super concentrated in that kind of state, and things that we need happen amazingly fast, and we have amazing miracles because there's such a concentration of, I need this to happen. I really need to survive. And there are times that things happen slower. On the one hand, you know, fast isn't necessarily better. If your goal is to have your lunch eaten, you can just, you know, inhale it quickly. You might get indigestion from eating too quickly, but your goal of having eaten your lunch is met. Now, if your goal is to enjoy your lunch and not have indigestion because, you know, you've enjoyed the process and chewed carefully, you know, manifestation can be like that. We can enjoy the process. And so we don't necessarily want to have it like, bam, manifested. Sometimes, you know, we're not ready for it to be, you know, we're not quite in the right mood for this to all manifest. You know, we want to enjoy the process spread out over time. And that's fine. Sometimes it's a subconscious desire to have it spread out over time. And so we're like, oh, why is this taking so long? And, you know, if we allow ourselves to realize that we enjoy this process, then suddenly it's less painful. And then there was one situation, my mom had her leg amputated. And the day that she had her leg amputated, I lost my computer, my little laptop. It just, from that day on, I could not find it anywhere. It was gone. I looked everywhere. We called the hospital to make sure I didn't leave it in the waiting room. And like, it was just nowhere. And then the day that my mom got her prosthetic leg, Sergey just happened to be sitting on the couch, and it's a hide-a-bed, so there's like, you know, spaces in there. And he just randomly reached his hand down into a space and he's like, oh, hey, look, your computer. And so, you know, my computer was supposed to remanifest, but it was a timing thing. For some reason, it had to be coordinated exactly with mom's leg. I lost it the day she lost her leg, and I got it back the day she got her leg back. I don't know why my computer is mom's leg, but there are things like that where you can't find something or you can't manifest something, and then suddenly it manifests. And why the timing had to be like that, you know, sometimes, you know, you can see that, yeah, well, this, you know, it lined up perfectly in terms of timing, but you can't always see that ahead of time when you're discouraged about the fact that your thing is not there. So sometimes the fact that we can't manifest something is, you know, it's something we're supposed to have, but we just have the timing wrong. And so we need to relax and let the timing happen when it needs to happen. And we were talking about different existential needs for different people. One of our blocks to being able to manifest, you know, objects that seem unnecessary or money, you know, there are many religious programs that glorify poverty. And there were a lot of saints who were poor that didn't have money. And the irony is, a lot of saints are glorified as like, oh, they were poor and they were a saint. And so if we want to be saint-like, we need to not have money. But the reality is a little bit backwards. So the reason they didn't have money, they didn't have any need to store money, because anything they needed, they could just manifest without money. And on the spur of the moment, like, oh, we need this, boom, it was there. So they were masters of manifestation. It wasn't that they were just poor people. And the thing that, you know, sometimes they'd go around barefoot, they would have tattered clothes, they wouldn't have a house to live in. They'd like, you know, go to other people and ask if they could spend the night there, or, you know, if they would give them a meal. And that seems like a very poor existence, but they didn't want to have a house. Like a lot of homeless people don't want to live in a house. That's why they're on the streets, because they don't want a house. And they could manifest themselves a house, but they don't want one. And so it's not an existential need for them, whereas we're like, oh, but they obviously they obviously, they're poor and like, oh, that's terrible. But all of us are able to manifest our existential needs. So if a person is homeless, either they're going to be working on themselves and trying to figure out, how do I manifest myself a house? And then they'll do that. Or they don't want a house, and so that's why they don't have one. And so things that the saints in the past were able to manifest were the things that they need. Like, they could do miracles, but they didn't have a house. Like, they didn't want a house, but they wanted to help heal this person, let's say. And a very important quote: money does not make people happy. Happy people make money. So if you feel happy and you realize that you have all the things that are your existential needs, you're in a state where you can manifest. If you're in this sense of, I need to have this thing and I can't live without it, and you feel deprived, that is not a state where you can create. And I see in the quote box, or in the chat box, Tanya says the leg has to do with moving forward. Left is masculine and right is feminine. So apparently in the Chinese healing system, left is masculine, and the language of pain that Elmine usually talks about, she says that right is masculine. So pick one. In my mom's case, it really seems like the right leg problems she has are masculine oriented. Thank you, Donnie. I will think about that. So talking about our intuition and how to determine what it is that we need to manifest in order to be able to express ourselves. Passion is our biggest. So especially in the Eastern Church and Orthodox Church, passion is the word that they use to talk about sin. And therefore, a lot of religious circles consider that any sort of passion or emotion is bad, and you need to pretend like you have no emotions and no drive in life. You should just be the sort of like sponge that, gets walked on by everybody. So the church fathers that were saints and talked about passionlessness, what they meant is not a suppression of the emotions and sense of direction in life that help you express yourself. But when you have completely accepted yourself the way you are, and you find that inner calm that comes from complete self-knowledge and self-acceptance, that is the state where you can create, where you can receive inspiration and you can express it. This is the state of lightness, where you're not attached to outcome. Lightness of heart, or passionlessness, is a very resourceful state, but it's been distorted by people who are just trying to imitate it by following, the outward actions into suppression. So suppressing your emotions is not going to help you at all. But the state of passionlessness is, the resourceful state that we need to get to in order to create. And in this state of passionlessness, we still feel inspiration, and we still feel that really strong drive of our life direction, the passion that is our guiding light. And our emotions are very important. They are our strongest motivators to act. So like I said, that water symbolizes emotions, and water is used as a very good source of energy. So like we use water to create electricity in a dam, or like mills will use a water wheel to turn a grinding stone to grind the grain. And our emotions give us the power that we need in order to bring things into action. But if we don't control our emotions, if we just let them run, willy-nilly and do whatever they want, then it's like the dam breaks and we have this uncontrollable flooding and destruction. So emotions can be very destructive. We need to learn to control them, not suppress them, because that doesn't help, but controlled expression. So in working with emotions, the first thing we have to do is accept them, rather than like, oh, that's a bad emotion, I can't have that emotion. That doesn't help it express beneficially. So we feel, let's say, anger, and we're like, okay, so what is this anger here for? We need to feel the emotion, not suppress it, not be afraid of it, but understand the purpose. Why am I feeling angry? Anger is usually a desire to change something, and it gives you a really strong impulse to actually do something, to break some walls, to create change. If we just let our anger loose and we start, destroying whatever it is we have around us, it can be very destructive. It can harm people. It can harm our own lives. But we need to feel the essence of what it is that we need to change. What can I direct this anger towards so it'll actually be beneficial? Passion and inspiration are partners. Passion is the proactive and inspiration is the receptive. So we feel inspiration and then we express it. And if we don't feel inspiration for something, then that probably means it's not time for us to do that. So there's no point in us trying to force ourselves to do something we don't feel inspired to. Sometimes we're like, oh, well, I should manifest something, or I should do something today. I don't feel any inspiration at all. And sometimes that just means that we need to spend some time in rest and silence, and the inspiration will come once we've gotten to that state. If we've spent too much time living in other people's worlds and we have suppressed our own inspiration, then we need to reactivate our inspiration, because the reason we don't feel it is because we've forgotten how. We've sort of lost it. And so then we won't be able to determine what we want. We need to spend some time within getting to know our inspiration to be able to manifest it. Another big block to being able to manifest things is a lack of specific concreteness. Like, I've been having this trouble a lot in my life lately. I have things that I want to do, but I don't know exactly what or how. It's like, well, we should have dinner. Well, what should we have? I don't know. Well, I mean, we could do this, we could do that, but until you decide what you're going to fix for dinner, you can't put it in the pan and heat it up. And so if you feel lost or disoriented in life, your desire won't manifest because you don't know what desire it is that you're trying to direct your energy towards. So if you feel like, things aren't manifesting, that's another thing to look at. Do you have a specific thing that you're trying to manifest? And it doesn't have to be a specific. I mean, if you're too specific, then you're locking yourself into a specific outcome. But you do have to have a feeling and a sort of understanding of what you want. Like, okay, we want to have dinner. Great. What do we want? And we look in the fridge, and well, there's this, and well, there's that. And if you have this sort of like vague sense of like, well, I don't know what I want, you're not gonna pull something out and heat it up. So when you decide, that will go well with that, yes, then you can actually do it and move forward. If you're in the position where you don't know what you actually want, maybe you have, lived in a sort of suppressed situation, and, you've gotten out of touch with your desires, or, you've had lots of experiences where you're trying to manifest something and a lot of things just don't work. And so you're like, well, obviously that's not what I really want. What is it that I really want? One of the best ways to figure out your true desires is if you're, in your downtime in between, things that you're having to concentrate on, where do your thoughts go? What do you start thinking about? Like, one of the things I do is I frequently will imagine some sort of like a podcast or a webinar where I'm teaching people, especially if, Sergey and I are having a conversation about like, oh, people said this, or, this happened in the news, or, and I'm like, this is something that we need to help people with, or something like that. So I'll spend a lot of time in my head creating webinars. So that's maybe something I should, think about directing my energies to trying to actually do and manifest. Sometimes the situations we imagine are a little bit less specific and concrete, like how am I supposed to be, like I also have some sort of romantic storylines that I imagine and create in my head, and it's like, okay, well, that's obviously not a situation that I want to be like manifesting in my life, but what does that say about generally it's a desire to feel accepted and loved. And so you have to look at your situation of who do I not feel accepted and loved by, and how can I change that situation? How can I accept and love myself in this situation that I feel rejected by somebody, or I feel they don't understand me, and that is a problem for me. And then that points to the areas of your life where you need to introduce some self-love and start working on that. Sometimes we have some things that we want to change in our life, and we're like, oh, it'd be great to live this. And then we start imagining ourselves living it, and it's terrifying. It's like, oh, but if I do that, then I'm probably not going to be able to deal with that. Then, everything will just fall apart. We don't have to change, like make large scale changes right away. If something is scary for us, like Almin said, whatever you can imagine, you can manifest. But if you can't imagine it, like you're trying to imagine yourself living this new life and you can't imagine it, it's not going to happen. So don't start with that. Start small, something that you can imagine. Like you're trying to change your entire life routine. Well, okay, so I'm going to get up a half hour earlier, or I'm going to get up at a regular time every day. If you're like, all over the page and you get up at, like 12 one day and 9 one day, like, okay, well, if I want to start having a routine, let's start trying to get up at the same time every day, or get up by 10 o'clock every day. Those are sort of small routines rather than like getting up at 5 and having a really packed day, all at once. So you can do your manifestation gradually and take steps, when you get used to one thing and then you add something else in. And then so we talked about if you don't have inspiration, sometimes that means you need to just sort of like wait for your inspiration. But sometimes, especially if you're a little bit out of touch with your inspiration and you need to start feeling things, it's easier, for example, on a bicycle to change direction and to start moving. So sometimes it's good to just start doing something. I remember when I was looking for a job at one point, I ended up working for Starbucks for a while, but the first thing I did was I applied with Uber, and I never actually ended up working with Uber. But the fact that I applied for Uber meant that Starbucks called me for a job interview, whereas nothing was moving. And so sometimes you just have to start doing something. And to me, a lot of times it seems like, oh, well, that's wasting all this energy on stuff that's not going to turn into anything. But Sergey is sort of my spiritual guru, and he's like, no, it's really important to like create some movement. And so you notice, you didn't waste time applying for Uber, because that movement that you brought into your life created the call from Starbucks, and they called you for a job interview. And that would have happened if you hadn't been moving, if you'd just been sitting there waiting for them to call. So a lot of times, in order to get something moving, we have to start doing something. And it doesn't always matter what it is, as long as we're, creating movement. So I was going to do a little manifestation practice going through the desires we want. I want to ask if anybody has questions about this yet, and then we'll go into things that are to questions that are not related to this topic. Nobody's typing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Oh,
I have a question.
Good.
Okay, go ahead.
So passion, if you want to go through that a little bit more, it's something that I understand, the passion and inspiration and passion, and because in Belvasvado we also work with passion and joy. So the ability to feel it passionately, it's important. But I understand what you're saying when passionless, that is state of lightness. I feel because I have that. So it's not that I don't have feeling, I don't know, but it just I enjoy things in a different way. So maybe that is the passionless that you're explaining. But then when I work with myself or others with joy and passion, I always feel like this wave of inspiration needs to come a little bit forcefully. So I need to have some kind of passion and show. So this is the area I really like to explore a little bit more. I don't know if I could. So how could something be manifested if there is no passion in that way there? So or is that passionless that you're saying is actually that joy and passion we are?
It's Sarah, passionless passion.
So it's a passionless passion. So okay.
Yeah, passionless passion.
The passionlessness really just means there's no attachment, there's no emotional.
Yes. Okay.
Or passionate passionlessness.
Okay, so if I don't really express, like, I always say plant-based, no sugar ice cream. So if I want to manifest that ice cream close to me all the time, but I don't really say that, express the passionately, I really want to, like a child.
But Sarah, you don't create passion artificially.
Yes, you
just feel it. You just feel it as it feels.
Yes. You start with the inspiration. So you have inspiration, which is sort of like a soft inspiration, and like, so passion and joy are a pair, and inspiration and passion are a pair. So inspiration is sort of like this joy, just this internal sort of like soft joy. And then that expresses, and then the proactive expression of it is the passion.
It comes naturally. It comes naturally. You don't force it. You don't control it. Like, for example, when I'm making music, sometimes it looks like I feel nothing, but suddenly, such a passion. Wow. Okay. And then I feel nothing again. So those processes are going naturally, but end result is obvious.
So you stay in that state of inspiration enough to create that passion naturally. So you have to stay in that state of inspiration, feel the inspiration or the joy enough to feel that passion to come. So if you're staying in that inspiration, you're staying in that inspiration, but then your focus goes all the time to something else, maybe the other one is your passion.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Actually, it's going to be our next topic. Jill will probably tell us more about that, the power of honesty, but it will be next time. We're going to invite you to a webinar dedicated to power of honesty, when we're just honest with ourselves. What I really want, because if I really want something, I can't hold my passion.
It will burst. Is really, I love that.
It will explode.
Yes, I like that. So
exactly. But it comes naturally. You don't control it. You don't try to force it. It's just exploding within yourself. You can't hold it. And
I love your passion.
Your manifestation. Yeah. Wow. So
I love your passion, but this is actually really good, really powerful, because I feel in myself and also in a lot of original ones that I interact, I notice that there is authenticity, there is desires, they are joy, and there are a lot of inspiration in there, but the passion is not coming. That the things that it's maybe because being in a lot of us being in the suppressed
perhaps
places, that
this is
really
one of the reasons.
Cannot stay. We know, a lot of us know the passion, the joy that we have, but we cannot stay there enough to create that passion. Maybe there's a fear still. Maybe there's still fear of that failure, or fear of being something. So I thought
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. It's very important.
Thank
Someday
you. I really like that. I
we will
want,
go deeper into it someday because this is very important. So
yeah,
what's
that trust that you're going, you said authenticity or
ah,
something that is gonna come later. I like
yes.
to
Mhm.
do that with you.
The
Yes,
power of
thank you.
honesty. We are going to
Honesty,
power
honesty.
of
Okay, I
honesty.
will be there.
Honesty, authenticity, it's basically the same. So
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
tell
Yeah.
us about it more later. Yeah.
Okay, I will there.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, deepest desire, manifestation.
So we are going to do a short manifestation practice.
Now it's time to practice.
So the first thing we need to do is determine what it is that we're going to be working on manifesting. What is your deepest desire? If you don't know, then what is it you find yourself thinking about the most? What is it that you find yourself sort of like, yearning for, desiring? And then we're not going to do this right now, but something that you can do to try and bring up your desires. You can try writing a story or a fairy tale, just like creative writing, whatever it is that you feel like writing about. And then you notice the topics that come up in your writing. Is this, like a happy ending of a girl who's looking for approval among, people? Does this mean that you're looking for approval? You need to find places in your life you don't approve of yourself. I feel passionate about surrendering to the will of the infinite.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. It's so in the Orthodox Church, a lot of the terminology they use is passionless passion, or what are some of the other opposites that they use?
I don't remember truly.
Well, like the Virgin Mary was a bride, but usually marriage is all about sex, and so that's sort of like she was the non-bridal bride. And there's always like opposites that are juxtaposed to help us understand that true depth and spirituality is actually the joining of opposites. And so you want to have not destructive passion that's just like crazy emotions, but like if you look at Christ's life in the Gospels, he was able to calm the wind and the waves, which is thoughts and emotions. So he could just calm himself, like, okay, I'm in the middle of an emotional storm, and just whew, deep breath, we're calm. And yet he could also go into the temple where you're supposed to like act according to how the priests tell you, right? But he had the authority of like, no, I am the most spiritual person here, I don't care who's priest, and I don't like how people are selling animals to be sacrificed according to the Old Testament rules, which were most likely being misinterpreted. But this is creating sort of a zoo of a house of prayer. So he went in and turned tables over and beat, just like created mass chaos in like total, spout of anger. And if you look at the story where he raised Lazarus from the dead, that was also a very emotional thing. He went in and he's like, Lazarus, angry at, this is my disciple, I've been teaching you all about eternal life, and you go and die, like, what's wrong with you? So there was obviously a lot of anger there, and without that emotion he would not have been able to raise Lazarus from the dead. Yes, Michelle, we are reading your your comments.
Michelle, this is your passion, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So your deepest desire, the thing that you desire to do, and sometimes you imagine, okay, so that thing that I'm imagining, that is implausible, that is not going to be helpful, or that's not going to be possible. But what is the thing that you desire behind what you're imagining? And we also Sarah touched on our fears. So if we're afraid of failure, we're going to sabotage ourselves because we're going to attract that failure to us. If we're afraid of success, we will sabotage our endeavors because, like, we can't believe that we're going to succeed. And so we're going to run away from that. So in order to actually manifest that something, we want to start small. What is it that we can actually imagine? What is it, something that doesn't seem scary, but is a step towards manifesting what it is that we want? A lot of times there's internal manifestation that happens beforehand. If it's something where we're really desiring approval from others, that's something where we need to go inside and figure out where we're not approving of ourselves and how can we accept and acknowledge ourselves and all of our feelings and the way we are. And in order for the manifestation to happen successfully, we have to let go of the results. If we're attached to, well, this has to happen, it has to happen this way, then we're focusing on the wrong thing, and that attachment is creating a block. So the main thing that we want to focus on is not the outer events and reactions of other people, but our inner state. That is something that we can control and can manifest. So we want to let go of things, get to this calm state, and we want to try and imagine ourselves being happy and calm. What other options, if this particular thing we're imagining doesn't happen, if we don't find our hard drive that we need to, do things with, what are our other options? How else can we solve our problem? If we don't find dill to make pickles, what are our other options? We can give the pickles, maybe somebody else needs cucumbers. Maybe they, I don't need 20 jars of pickles because I don't have anyone to give them to. And somebody else needs fresh cucumbers. So maybe, that's actually a better solution, is to, and life is helping me by not giving me dill. So I have to give the cucumbers away. Or maybe I don't have time to do this many more pickles. So we need to think of what other options we have and see them all as equal. So life will help me determine which of these options is the best, but I need to be in a calm, happy state, not feel like a victim, not feel attached to what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, not feeling offended that life is not giving me these things that I need, not being offended by other people that seem to reject me, but we react with compassion to those who try to offend us, even if they're trying actively to be mean to us. We just take a step back and, sort of like in the analogy of the pond, we sort of sink down deeper where there's no more waves. The waves are up there somewhere, and we're in the safe, calm part of the water that's not moving. And so then we want to find this inner calm. And the inner calm is where we can find our natural inspiration, not the things that we're trying to force to happen, not the things that we're attached to, but the inspiration that's coming from within, from source. That calm state where we can feel our actual inspiration. And we realize that that calmness, our expressing our essence, doesn't depend on people around us. It doesn't depend on circumstances turning out a certain way. Our inner state is the cause. People are people, circumstances are circumstances. We are who we are. And so we look at what it is we're trying to manifest. Why do I need this? What is it that I really want? I want so-and-so to pay attention to me. I want so-and-so to actually notice me. But what I really want is I want to feel loved. So I need to love myself. I'm trying to manifest this particular sum of money. I need $1,000, and I need this $1,000 by tomorrow. But really what I want is the ability to pay my debts without having stress. And so the $1,000 by tomorrow will help me do that. But there are other options of how that could come about. The person that I owe money to could forgive me. There could be, somebody else could pay it for me. There are other ways that could come about. And so if we focused on the actual base desire, the ability to pay our debts without stress, that's something that life can give us. If we're forcing to I need $1,000 and I need this person to give me $1,000 by tomorrow, that's probably going to block any sort of manifestation. So we need to focus on you're telling me I can grow dill. There's a lot of dill, And it's a lot of work to take the seeds out. In Russia, they grow the dill like, just the head, and they put the head in the jar. So in Russia, they don't sell dill seed because like people grow their own dill. So yeah, I had that problem in Russia too. And in America, they just sell dill seed, so it's great. But then they run out because it's pickling season. And so however you do it, you're always going to have a problem. But, on the other hand, life uses that to direct you. So if you focus on what you want to have a feeling of satisfaction from making your pickles. And, you've got, how many jars do we have already? About 20, maybe a little bit more. So we've got over 20 jars of pickles, and that they may well be enough. And maybe I should feel satisfied with that and happy to give away more cucumbers. Maybe we're going to be giving away pickles over the winter. And so life will give me dill so that I can keep doing that. But what you need to focus on is the actual thing that you want. So the feeling of what you want, not the feeling of having dill seeds in your hands, but the feeling of living in plenty, being able to use your cucumbers without having to throw them away, of your cucumbers going to a good cause, of having the amount of pickles that you need, of being able to help other people and give away food to, have the joy of sharing with others. So if you focus on the feeling rather than the actual thing you want, then you're going to be able to manifest more successfully. And you're going to open yourself up to maybe this thing that I was attached to is really not at all what I actually need. Maybe it's not the $1,000 I need. Maybe I need a friend to come along and, help me realize, some of the things I can, do differently. And, maybe instead of paying rent, I'm going to move in with a friend, and I love living with this friend. And so it's a good thing that I, didn't have money to keep living on my own, because I actually really prefer to live with my friend, and it saves me so much money. So like there's always different options of how we can solve our problems. And if the more we get focused on one solution, the less we allow life to actually help us, and the less our manifestation is going to be good or worthwhile or what we actually want. So what we really want is the feeling state. So we want to focus on that feeling state. The feeling is the true goal. So we focus on that feeling, and we focus on feeling that feeling. We feel our desired feeling. Going back to the quote that it is not money that makes people happy, it is happy people that make money. If you get that $1,000 that you need by tomorrow, it's not going to make you happy. It might solve one problem, but it's not going to make you happy. But if you are happy, then you will have everything you need, including money. So first, we feel the feeling that we are desiring, and matter follows frequency. The deepest interpretation of the Virgin Mary, Archangel Gabriel came to her and said, you're going to have, a baby, and la 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 la. And Maria, which, mother means matter. They're very closely related words. She says, may it be to me according to God's word. Because that's how it always is. Matter follows intent, frequency. So this frequency feeling of what we are creating creates the pattern that matter has to follow. So Virgin Mary, as the eternal mother, demonstrates that principle of whatever God says will happen. And God is the source that we have within us, the source of our inspiration. And so that inspiration, that passion, we allow that to come from us. We don't force it. We don't try and create it. It's something that is in us that we have to allow to express and release that. So we allow that frequency pattern to emanate from us, and then matter around us in the physical world has to follow suit. I'm sure all of you have seen demonstrations of, you have like a cup, and then they have a piece of paper on top and some metal shavings on the paper, and you take a tuning fork and you put it on the glass, and the metal shavings create a particular pattern. You take a different tuning fork that's a different note, and you put that on the glass, and all of a sudden the metal shavings rearrange to the new pattern that corresponds to the new note. And that's exactly how our feelings manifest the world around us. So in that state where we feel our inspiration and we feel what feeling states, what desires we have, we allow that to emanate from us, and then matter has to follow suit. We always manifest what it is that we really want, whether our mind acknowledges that that's what we want, or whether our mind thinks we should be wanting something else, or thinks that it does want something else. What manifests around us is always what we really want. But we can analyze, why is it that I want this? We can always change. I've been manifesting victimhood. Do I like that? Do I want that? Can I change the victimhood? Is that something that I want to change on a feeling level? But we have to change it on a feeling level first. And when we get to that state of depth and calm, we can feel, am I able to change this or not? We activate that new feeling that's flowing through us. We allow that to express, and that manifests into our outer world. Sometimes it seems like too much of a change, and we sort of have this jerk reaction, and we go back to where we were. And, we aren't always able to maintain our new reality that we're creating. Sometimes that's because it was a little too sudden. We need a more gradual change. And as long as we can accept ourselves through that, the main thing that we're trying to manifest is self-acceptance. So if we judge ourselves for like, oh, well, you can't manifest anything, and there you were for 2 seconds in your new reality, and then you went back, that's only going to make it harder. So if we accept ourselves as like, okay, so we were able to manifest a new reality for 2 seconds, but it was a little too much. It was a little overwhelming. We're going to do this more gradually. And we accept ourselves the way we are. And we accept our reality as what we actually correspond to. The reality that we have around us is what we are. And we can change that. But that change has to come from within rather than from our mind forcing things to change. Our mind cannot change our spiritual state. Our mind can help us figure out how to manifest the inspiration that comes from our spiritual side. Life always gives us what corresponds to our habitual feelings. The things that we always feel when we're not thinking about it, our, default program on our, computer, if you will, that's what's going to manifest. If we spend most of our time in this sense of, oh, life around me is hostile, everything is against me, how do I deal with that? And then we spend a few minutes a day trying to manifest a new reality. What's going to manifest is our habitual feelings, the state that we're in 90% of the time. And when we become conscious of those mental habits, those feeling habits, then we can change them and start feeling, oh, I'm back in that state again. I need to change. There's an interesting story in the Bible where the Israelites are trying to fight against, other tribes around them that are hostile. And the interesting note is that when Moses is standing on the mountains with his hands up, the Israelites are winning. when his hands get tired and he puts them down, the Israelites are losing. And there's no middle ground. There's no like they're starting to lose. It's like, bam, they're winning, bam, they're losing. So when we're in a state of surrender and acceptance, we're winning. We can manifest anything. You know, you have those times when you're like, oh, I'm running late for something. You run out of the house and the bus is right there, and you get in the bus and you just go, and there's like no delays, and you get all the lights green, and you get there just in time, and everything just works fine. And then there's the days where you thought you were leaving on time, but you get down to the bus stop and, oh shoot, I forgot something really important. So you have to go back to your apartment. You get it out, and then you come out, and then the bus takes 20 minutes to come, and you didn't think you were late, but now you certainly are. And like just nothing works, and like there's delays everywhere, and you're just totally stressed, and nothing is manifesting effortlessly for you. I'm sure all of you have had some sort of instance of both of those, where like totally different states. And that's what it's like, is, you know, hands up in surrender and openness, and hands down in like, I can do this myself. And the more we become conscious of what we're doing, you know, we get to a point where we can feel, okay, so I'm interfering with the infinite, trying to control my life, and I'm trying to do things myself, and I'm getting in the way, and I'm feeling like things are against me, and I'm manifesting that. The more we're able to become conscious of that, you know, we're like, okay, so I know nothing's going to manifest, and I know that today is going to be a horrible day, so maybe I should just go home since I'm not going to get anywhere anyway, and just, you know, sit down, recollect, and, you know, try and get myself into a better space so that I can, you know, do something in my life. And the more we become conscious of those moments and able to fix them, then the better our lives will be, and the more we'll be able to manifest. Okay, so that's the end of me answering my own questions. And we have, yes, so we have two questions. One we already answered that we got over email, and then the other one was, maybe I should just read it. The question was about, if we are eternal beings, then do we need to be doing things? Right, I'm gonna go stop share, and you can just see my pretty face. If we're eternal beings, do we need to be planning for our future and writing a will, and, you know, making sure that, you know, like after we leave, which we're not going to do, that we have, you know, our, you know, assets worked out, and that kind of thing. So my answer to that is, if you want to make sure it doesn't rain, bring an umbrella. If you're really hoping it rains, then don't bring an umbrella with you and wash your car and, you know, like plan a big picnic or something like that. So for whatever reason, that's how it works. The more you're prepared for something, the less likely it is to happen. So if, and then the assumption of, oh, well, I'm going to live forever, is a mind activity. Your mind says, oh, well, I'm going to live forever, so I don't have to do all of these things. And then, you know, life throws you a lot of curveballs that you don't expect, that don't make sense logically. And so it ends up being, you know, let's say you end up in a coma for a week, and they're like, well, she's gone, so we're just gonna, well, she doesn't have a will, so we don't know what to do. And then, you know, you wake up after the coma, or you come back, you have a life after death experience, you come back, and you're like, well, why did you, like, you know, sell all my stuff off? And, you know, so sometimes it can be good to have a will. So the question is, I have a question regarding our new sigil, the 7 subdued qualities of God, of the gods 4. Living immortality requires the complete release of the fear or anticipation of death. Should I make a plan for my assets if something happens to me? I don't anticipate anything happen to me, and I hope to live forever, but it does seem odd not to have a plan. So yes, you're more likely to be afraid of something happening if you don't have a plan. And the idea is to completely overcome any fear. And if in the process of writing your will, it is very possible that in the process of writing your will, you'll come up with some emotional reactions to like, ooh, me not being here. And that can be the process of writing your will can also be a good exercise in working through any possible fears that you haven't realized are there. So yes, I would highly recommend writing a will and having it ready just to make sure that you don't have to use it. We answered that already. So the other question I already touched on: do humans have eternal life through dying and being reborn, or are only original ones eternal? We were talking about in the very beginning different groups creating like this is us versus them, and why it's important to have the division of original ones versus humanity. But on the other hand, the divisions can create a lot of problems because our mind grabs onto these divisions like, oh, that person's human, well, they're not eternal, and they're
and Almin actually asked us to stay under assumption that we don't know who is the original one and who is a human. Because if the question is, do humans have eternal life, or only original ones, I would ask, do you mean a particular person or just in general? Because we don't know in general how many original ones are on Earth, because we don't know all original ones yet. Because there are still people here in the Western world, in Russia, we still have people joining our, so we don't have like sort of closed community, we have online store. So Almin's online store in Russian, we have always new inflows of people who are interested in Almin's work and buying from our online stores. So we still didn't close our circle. So, and people on the street, people in the offices that we visit. So we always stay under assumption that there might be some original ones around us, which we don't know if they're original ones. Mm-hmm. So, and Almin, I remember Almin told us at the retreat, actually in different times, on different occasions, she told us that we never need to assume that we know exactly who is the original one, who is a human, and her own attitude towards people around the outer world. She treats every person as an original one, as a god or goddess. So taking that in consideration, we don't know who is who, and because infinite is everything is created through the infinite and by the infinite and from the infinite, and infinite's life is infinite. Eternal. So yeah, exactly. Infinite is infinite. So everyone is part of the infinite. Every flower is a part of infinite. Every insect is a part of infinite, and every human being is a part of the infinite. So everyone has a potential for the eternal life. Absolutely.
Yes. And so my short answer would be yes, humans have eternal life, but it is also theoretically possible for a being to have, we'll call it contracts with demons or something like that. So they, instead of fulfilling the infinites will, they will contract with different beings that take their soul energy in order to
entities
manifest certain things, and then when they die, the these other beings, these demons come and they, take the soul energy, and it's theoretically possible that there would be nothing left and the person would sort of evaporate. Or so those kinds of things are theoretically possible. So we can't guarantee that every single person
and reassembled again, resurrected again. So yeah, I actually like how Min says that that there's no light and darkness, there's light and undeveloped light. So and she really told us that some entities, some beings, some human beings or any other beings have some sort of contacts with undeveloped light. So we have actually three forces in the cosmos. One that promotes light, one that keeps a balance, and another force is where it darts light. So, and all of those three forces keep life going. So it's a very interesting topic. Maybe at some point, someday, we will touch that. It's not that topic today.
And that's the base of all created life that is physical and matter. You have a proton and a neutron and the electron. So you have three, the positive and the negative and the neutral are at the very base of every single, piece of matter, anything that is physical.
So yes, in this sense, everyone is wired differently. Mm-hmm. But we need to know the most important thing. We are creators of our own reality. So we can tell that about any living being on Earth, any human being or divine being. So we don't differentiate because we don't know. We are creators of our own destiny. So because we actually had some questions from our Russian light family. So whether I'm supposed to die or can I live forever? So how about eternal life? How about staying alive on Earth forever in the physical body? Or should we transition and come back? So, and I told that person, what do you want personally? What's your preference? Because we always know within ourselves what our preference is.
And it's not a mind preference.
It's not a mind preference. We know, it's a gut feeling. It's a gut feeling.
They can't see your tummy.
Yeah. So my question is, what's your gut feeling? Not what you try to figure out in your mind, but what's your gut feeling? Yes. Do you know that you stay forever alive in the physical body on Earth? Or do you know that you have to transition or whatever? So whatever you want, whatever you choose, whatever you know about what your life is, what your destiny is. And Jill told us today very beautifully that in order to always keep in touch with ourselves, it's good to have times of silence. And not only during times of silence, it's always good to keep in touch with ourselves, keep in touch with our own personal reality. And this way, we always know what we want, what we don't want, what we want to manifest, what we don't want to manifest. And if we always keep in touch with ourselves, with our true feelings, if we are honest with ourselves, so power of honesty, Jill will tell us a little bit about it, more about our upcoming webinar. So we never have questions whether what I'm doing right, whether what I'm doing wrong.
Don't second guess yourself.
Don't second guess yourself. Whether I want to manifest that or I don't want to manifest that.
You ask yourself, is this really something
we always know?
But you don't second guess yourself.
We always know. We always live in the state of knowingness. We always know.
So instead of a mind doubting thing, it's that you ask yourself, is this what I really want? And you feel it. And if you feel, yes, this is what I want, then, you go ahead with it. And if you feel like, yeah, this really was a mind thing and I don't have the feeling behind it, then maybe I should, change and do something else. But if your mind comes in, your mind is like, oh, that's probably something stupid. You probably don't want that. Then you can just tell your mind to shut up because it's not.
Any other questions?
I wanted to go
Did we-
back
did we
to
answer the
no, we
questions?
didn't.
Emailed
Um,
questions. Yeah.
I also want
Yeah.
to go back to Pavitra commented
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
about wills.
Yeah.
And I forgot to add so the main thing to go with is your intuition. Like I personally don't have a will. I also don't have a whole lot of money or assets. But if you just don't feel any attraction to like why would I write up a will, then probably then you don't need to. But if you've started thinking about like, well, maybe I should, then it's probably a good idea just to make sure you don't need it. This is how life works. And then Michelle's question, which she asked in the beginning, like I asked people to Michelle. What do I do when I forget to change Merkaba direction the day after spinning the top counterclockwise? This is going to be a question for Sergey because he was more involved with the Merkaba teams.
Yeah. And how does one surrender?
We kind of talked about that, the difference between infinite surrender and trust without giving yourself away. It's a delicate.
If you feel like we answered your question, she actually left.
Oh, right.
But she can write us anytime if she feels like we didn't answer the question completely. Yeah. So, but it's, I think it's clear for each of us that surrender to the will of the infinite, it's actually, Jill told us a lot about it, using many examples of multiple choices. Yeah, or how did you say that about multiple choices?
It's when we go into our inner space and we feel whether this was something that we were trying to force from our mind down, or whether it's something that is welling up from us inside. And so it's the surrender to what is coming up from within, surrender of the mind to what is coming up from within,
exactly,
rather than our mind squashing what is trying to come up from here.
Because first of all, we are parts of the infinite. Our true self is our infinite self, and our infinite self is our true self. So whatever we really want in our gut feeling is the infinite's will, because we are at one with the infinite. Actually, Almin told us about someone asked her a question: how should we pray to the infinite? Are there any right ways to pray to the infinite? And Almin answered that, well, you don't know what you're asking about, because how can you you imagine the infinite as something else outside of you, separate being? But it's impossible because you are a part of it, and you are it, and your true self is your infinite self. You just need to sit down, get yourself quiet, and listen. Listen to yourself, and you will get in touch with your true desires. And whatever your true desires are, is the infinite desire, which you feel as your desire within you. If you are at peace with yourself, if you calm down, if you're in a place of solitude, place of silence, when you quiet down all of your external surface, gimmicks of your mind and gimmicks, and you quiet down and you feel yourself, then you feel your true desires, and then you surrender. You surrender to your true desires, and you surrender to the wave of inspiration. And this wave of inspiration, you're like riding the wave. Yeah.
And it brings you like for outcomes. So you feel
whatever.
You feel what it is that you want, and that is your guiding light, the movement. Mm-hmm. But you surrender the outcome. So you're like, okay, life, this is something that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. This wave, this force. And then you let it go instead of trying to control how it's going to manifest. And like, oh, I have to have this outcome. You're like, okay, life, I need this. I don't know how you're going to do it, but ball's in your court now. And so you determine what it is that you need. Yeah. And then you let go of the outcome. And then the outcome will come back to you. So that's the surrender. And then if you lose yourself, it's when you sort of like say, oh, well, that passion, that's not something I'm supposed to manifest. No, passion. I'm supposed to get rid of you. And so you surrender to that passion, if that makes sense. You let that passion be the driving force.
And when you truly surrender, you don't chase the things you want. The things you want chase you. Yeah, and you just stay in peace and joy and having fun, enjoying yourself, enjoying the world, enjoying people.
So we have
and things come to you. It happens just by itself. That's what I know by my experience, and I think it's Jill's experience too. Yeah.
So we have 3 new messages, but
of course.
So Michelle asked her question.
Resurrection Merkaba. So to manifest, I often use the Resurrection Merkaba. What do I do when I forget to change Merkaba direction the day after spinning the top counterclockwise? But you don't intentionally forget, of course. It's just by accident, right? And Almin always tells us intention is the key. Don't be afraid to do something wrong, even if we forget, like to pronounce some angelic name, or if we forget some detail in Balvaspata or in Merkaba or in any other Almin's technique. So intention is the key. If our intention is pure, actually, I like Almin saying there are no mistakes. It's difficult to grasp sometimes by our minds, but it is true. Yeah.
I think Almin's idea with, you're supposed to sort of dismantle that the next day is that if you do it too often, then that can be harmful. So you don't want to do this too many days in a row. You want to do it one day and then stop the next day. And so chances are, without you remembering
it's accidentally.
It'll stop on its own.
As I understand Michelle, she means accidental forgetfulness.
So and she didn't send an intent to
it's not intentional. It's not intentional, systematic something intentional, something systematic.
And it's not like you activated it the next day to make sure that it kept going. You just you forgot to
or it's not something that you do on purpose to prove that nothing will be harmful, nothing will be wrong. No, it's we are not talking about that, because
if your intent was to do it correctly and to benefit yourself, then that will be what happens.
Again, question.
There's another question. I helped store some of my friend's personal belongings, and now I can't get a hold of her. She was part of Almin's group. What do I do?
Store some of friend's belonging, and so
depends who the person is.
It depends who the person is, and how is it possible not to get a hold of her? So she's not answering your phone call, or you can reach her by email. She's not answering your emails.
You could try doing like a post on Explorers of Consciousness if you're on Facebook, and say, does anybody know how to get a hold of so and so? They might be in touch with other people.
And I had examples in my life that some people gave me things and
then disappeared,
and they disappeared. So I'm just waiting for them to reappear again, and I keep their things. I don't know if it creates much inconvenience for you to keep those things. It's too many things that create some sort of inconvenience in your home, place you live. But I just in those situations, actually, I think I still keep some books, some things other people gave me to store for them, and they also disappeared. Some sort of disappeared.
I have a lot of objects that I borrowed from somebody, and then I still had it, but I lost contact with the person.
Like they are not online, they are not in social networks, their phones are not answering. Actually, they don't exist anymore. And I'm just waiting, sitting and waiting. Maybe someday they'll reappear and they'll get their things.
Thank you to all the people who are leaving, who have probably already left.
Yes, we actually officially finished. We're just talking. Just
Too many totes, clothing, etc.
Totes of us, totes.
Bags.
Huh?
Bags.
Bags? Oh, yeah.
Um,
So does it create any sort of major inconvenience for you? Because if it really creates really major inconvenience, then what I would do, I would just get rid of those things. Then in those situations.
Personally, I would try going on to Explorers of Consciousness and asking, does anybody know how to get a hold of so and so?
Yeah, this is storage problems. So what I would do, I would just get rid of those things. Truly, honestly.
I would try.
And
ask
then
first.
if person reappears, I would tell that person, well, you disappeared, and your things disappeared too. So, you can buy new things. Take some responsibility for your disappearance. So yeah, so we just do things what we feel like doing right, and don't feel guilty about it.
Yes, follow your inspiration.
We are free from the sense of guilt and false responsibility. You know, people should be responsible. Not only we, other people too. Bye bye, honey. It was so good to be with you. Thank you, Marie. You are, all of you are a source of our inspiration too. So we are inspiring each other. Yeah, because we cannot be without you, and probably vice versa. I can say things for you. Okay, so Jill, maybe you tell us a few words about Power of Honesty webinar next week.
Yes, we'll send.
We'll send.
We'll send out an announcement, an email announcement. We're planning to have another paid event, and
Michelle,
Sergey,
we love you.
We have found that it's maybe more effective and more fun to have people live rather than doing sort of just closed.
So great, so wonderful.
Recorded teachings, and so we're going to have another
together like this,
live event next week to share information on honesty.
Yeah, because it's really great power, and it's
all the areas.
It's very much connected with some things we
touched on today. Yes, all the areas where we have a tendency to not be authentic, things to analyze in our own lives of what needs a little tweaking, where we can be more authentic.
Because if our desire is really true desire, authentic desire, there's no problem. There should be no problem at all with manifestation.
Thank you, Denise.
So it's not absolutely a question. I try to manifest something, but I can't manifest it. Maybe I do something wrong. Maybe I need to know some more, more techniques. Maybe there are some more powerful techniques that exist, powerful incantations or power wheels or sigils. It's not a question at all. If you try to manifest something and you can't manifest it, it means that you really don't want to manifest it. And actually, our next webinar will help us how to get in touch with our inner honesty, how to be true with ourselves, how to differentiate our true desires and our imagined or artificial desires, to get rid of artificial intelligence completely. So we don't need to do, we don't need to be afraid of devices, technology, because technology is neutral, really.
It's a tool.
It's a tool, that we can use according to our consciousness. So if our consciousness contains artificiality, the technology will be artificial. And if we are true with ourselves and with others, if we live in honesty, in authenticity, in sincerity, and wholesomeness, sincere self-expression, then nothing to be afraid of. Nothing to be afraid of at all. Good. Ruth, we love you too. Katerina, we love you. Pavitra, Elsa, we love you. We love all of you.
Everyone who wrote a comment that we didn't come.
Yeah.
Say
So
anything
please let us know if for some reason we didn't answer your question. Please connect with us via email. Just let us know, and we will write you back. Okay? Great.
Sorry. Do we want to ask about feedback for time of webinars, if we're going to be combining with Russian ones, or
time for maybe. So
we were planning a lot of live
Yeah,
webinars,
yeah.
both with a Russian audience and our English audience, and
with
it might-
different groups. So we will see how it will work.
yes.
Well,
Thank you so much
thank
for
you.
being
We
here,
love
everyone.
you, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you,
Yes.
Sergey.
Thank
It's
you.
really lovely to see everybody's face, you know.
Oh yeah.
That's a wonderful
You're-
idea to do something like that live. Thank you for doing that. I'll be
Yeah,
there.
we are going to do things live.
Yes,
Yeah.
we will have more live events.
More live events. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, let me stop the recording.